What up? What up? Can I give myself a little bit round of applause?
You're exclusive.
I love them all. It's so hard to pick just. It's like trying to pick a child, a favorite child.
I also believe that everybody is special. And that's the thing, is discovering what makes you special and different from everybody else.
So
Whoa, that's $8 to $10 million a month.
it was more than that. It was a lot of money, and we had a lot of perks, and I had over 300 gas stations that I operated.
Hello, Tom Lavecchia here with the New Theory Podcast, our second one in 2018. And as all of our guests are special, we have a very, very special guest again, Hernan Lopez, who is the CEO of Wondery, which is a network of podcasts. As you guys know, because you're probably listening into this podcast, that podcasts are white hot. As Gary Vee says, audio gives you the gift of time. So we have Hernan Lopez. Hernan, welcome to the New Theory Podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. I'm doing great.
All right, so we'd like to learn about our guests and kind of build to Wondery. But before we start, give us a little bit about your formative years and what makes you you.
I grew up in Argentina, and my first job was as a copywriter for a radio and cable television company. So from a very early age, I gravitated to both the creative side and the business side, both in one, because my first boss was a salesperson. And I spent about 7 years in two different companies in Argentina before one day being invited to the U.S. To work for a cable television network. That led to a job at Fox, where I spent 18 years, starting in cable television, international cable television, then ending essentially running the Fox International Channels, which was the group that that essentially ran the Fox and Nat Geo and FX and Fox Sports channels all over the world. And that led me to a career at my first startup, Wondery, which I've had for the last 2 years.
Okay, so there's a lot. So you were in more traditional broadcasting, which was TV, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so just like many of us, including myself, we notice a trend where we think audio is a new video, and it becomes hot. So why go into audio, and why go into entrepreneurship after having a pretty stable career where you kind of did well for yourself?
I think the desire to be an entrepreneur led to my career in podcasting. I can't imagine that it would have been the other way around. I really, for the last about half of the time that was involved, I was daydreaming of being an entrepreneur. It really, you just can't, you can't really predict whether it's going to like it or not while you're doing it. You just know that you have this vibe and this desire within you, as people know whether they want to have a child or not. And I knew, though, that if I wanted to start a company, I wanted to have a chance to do creative work in a medium that hasn't already, where a medium where not everything has been done, where I feel that in television everything has been done already, and podcasts, in contrast, are very new. There are a lot of things that haven't been done, that haven't been tried.
Okay, so you recognize it as a hot growing medium. Now again, so were you more your old hat, hey, I'm a network guy, so let me create a network, or did you have your own podcast for a while and it grew and you were kind of the first client?
I never had my own podcast, actually. I mean, funny you mentioned that, because a year ago I had lunch with the founders of another podcast network, which, like most, started from their single podcast. So they asked me, which podcast did you launch with? And I said, nothing. And they asked, how can you launch a network of podcasts without any podcast? And I guess in hindsight, that probably would have been a better plan, but it took us 4 months before we secured the first show, Real Crime Profile. And our model has always been around a combination of shows that we make and shows that we represent. Both of them help each other. The shows that we make, like Young Charlie, like Ties of History, or American History Tellers, essentially have the Wondery brand. They stand for that immersive sound, that gets people to imagine themselves in the moment or in the middle of the story. And the shows that we represent are done by both independent podcasters, people that sometimes do podcasting full time, and large companies like NBC, Universal, and USA Today. So in our network, we have 60 shows, and they're shows done by a combination of creators.
Okay, so all right, this is good stuff. Okay, so on the New Theory podcast, and what's your model? Are you coming to me, hey Tom, join our network, you stay autonomous, but you join our network and we'll get you more listeners, or the opposite, join our network, we'll take care of everything and I pay you? Are you paying some of the time? Give us your network and how, like somebody like me, let's turn this into a sales call. Would a independent podcaster join, and what's your model like?
When they come to us, we're a full service network. We help them grow their audience, monetize, and we give them advice about content and sometimes even strategy beyond the podcast world. So the typical show that comes to us is already making anywhere between 30,000 and 100,000 downloads per episode.
Okay.
They've been podcasting on their own usually for about a year. We want to make sure that there are people like you that take podcasts seriously, and they will be doing the ad reads when the advertisers want them, and they will be publishing and releasing the episodes on the days of the week that the listeners expect they'll be published. And then through a combination of marketing activity, press, social media, metadata optimization, artwork optimization, we essentially help them get in front of listeners that they didn't have before. There are some shows that we have that have grown their audience by 3x and their revenue by more than that. And once we know we have established a basis as to how the show was performing, how effective the ad reads are, then we'll take the show to advertisers, and we will secure sponsors, which are still today the account for the majority of the audience, of the revenue for most podcasts.
Okay, so I decide to join your network if I have, and it's 30,000 to 100,000 per episode or per month? Per episode, right?
Right.
Okay. Now I join you, and what's the revenue? I'm assuming I pay you for those services, correct?
No, you don't. You essentially yes, you pay us a commission. So we go and secure advertising money, and we retain a commission that compensates us for the work of selling and doing audience acquisition, and then definitely we charge for the bandwidth fees that are required as a result of migrating the podcast to a podcast hosting platform. So that's it. So there are no fees paid to us. We take a risk on every new podcast that we bring.
So I'm understanding this. Okay, so it's kind of like the YouTube model in a way, but a closed YouTube model. Is that fair to say?
Yes, except that the advertisers that we'll bring to you are done in a more collaborative way than what YouTube does. With YouTube, you don't know what's running. With us, we will tell you ahead of time, partially because you'll have to record the ads. And then you'll know who's running. You'll be endorsing the products. You'll be trying the products more often than not. You'll be getting a box of Casper mattress one week and a box of Sunbasket, a meal kit delivery service the next week. And those are the kind of ads advertisers that tend to support most podcast advertising.
It's funny. I've actually heard one of your Casper ads on one of your bigger podcasts, so that was pretty cool. Okay, now, all right. So the kind of like going along the YouTube model in a way where, what about if somebody approaches me? Do I got to go, hey Hernan, Joe's place wants a mid-roll or wants a mention? Do they have to disclose that and then cut you in, or am I free to do that on my own?
We only represent shows on exclusive agreements, partially because our ad sales team is 4 people for 60 shows, and it's very time consuming to be checking whether somebody else is selling inventory. So we only take shows in an exclusive way.
Got it. All right. Now, but the only thing though, the only thing I'm not wrapping my head around is I could see if I knew about Wondery.com, and maybe this is part of your efforts being on the show, or like knowing more about Wondery, right, in terms of awareness, and then saying, hey, here's Wondery, this is a podcast network, I'm going to go ahead and pick a podcast. To me, I'm sensing it's the opposite. All these podcasts are decentralized and people are hearing about it. Is that by design, or do you want to create a hub like YouTube?
We do want to create a hub. If you go to Apple Podcasts, for instance, you'll find that there's a Wondery page where our shows are featured, and essentially we curate that page and send people to that page.
Got it. Okay.
It's true that the discovery is a problem in the podcast world. There are 400,000 shows, and how to navigate which ones are good versus not so good sometimes can be tricky, but it's something that is being improved. Discovery is being improved every day. Got it.
Now, one of the things, and I am nowhere near 30,000 per episode. I'm probably, I think on average, I could do I've done a lot, like 8,000, 9,000, but I probably do closer to 3,000 on average, which is it's something, right? But I also have a magazine, and I do an article, and that also gets another a few thousand views. So I'm a little bit different because this is to support a bigger brand, but I like the idea of the podcasting as a medium. So my question to you is, and this is one of the things that I struggle with as a podcaster, and a lot of podcasters listen to this, is the analytics. I'm sorry, but I do not trust Apple. Sorry to break it to you. I do not trust the analytics from Apple, the new analytics that came out. I just don't trust them. I'm still a bush leaguer. I was going to go over to Libsyn. I kind of, chickened out, and I stay with SoundCloud. But I can tell you categorically, and I'm sorry, I'm going to spend a minute on this because this annoys me. I would turn on my Apple TV, I would turn on the podcast, and let them play all day. I do the same on my iTunes. I would even go to an Apple store and play them all through. My point being was I was doing litmus tests on trying to capture correct analytics, and I'm sorry, they're way, way, way off. So when I come to you and say, hey, I have 30,000 downloads, how do you verify that, and how do you get good analytics for podcasting?
Well, I think that what Apple is doing is a great first step, because it's the first time that they are letting the content creators know how many people are actually pressing start on the podcast as opposed to just getting an automatic download. And the numbers that they offer are not meant to be compared to the number of total downloads, because being very clear that their numbers are only representing people who have downloaded iOS 11 or the iTunes 12, which is only a subset, a little over half of the total install base. And that in turn is a subset of the total universe. So of course the numbers are going to be lower than total download numbers. But on the flip side, once you go into that into a portal, you can see who is listening. Not who is listening, but how many people are skipping and what points, which I think is very valuable information.
No, correct. I'm with you, but I want you to go a little deeper. Yeah. Let's just say 3 podcasters come to you and they say, hey, here's my platform. Give me one absolute analytic platform that you trust. Give me one. I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but I got to ask you this. Give me one that you're like, we got to do our research. And give me one when they come to you, I'm like, sorry, I love you and everything, but we can't just trust these analytics. Can you give us the 3, please?
I can't name them. I mean, if we were calling between friends, I would do it. But
okay.
In public.
Okay. No, I respect that because I don't want you to turn. I'm not up for any awards. So, right. SoundCloud, I think has great data outside the Apple ecosystem. I think once you get to Apple, just whatever reason, the APIs don't play nice. I hear good things about Libsyn. I just started out on SoundCloud. I'm too lazy to transfer over. And I am very unhappy with Apple Analytics. All right. So you're a smart guy. You're at 60 shows. What is the medium and near-term plan? Meaning, hey, I want to get to 300 shows, and then, kind of, it'll hockey stick. Give us kind of your medium-term plan.
It's all about building and acquiring new shows. So we work on two tracks. On one hand, our head of talent relations goes out and reaches out to existing shows, but lately it's more about inbounds. A lot of shows are calling, and people with big brands, like one day the LA Times, they reach out to us and they wanted to get into podcasts. They need a partner, and we took them. We created Dirty John with them. And at the same time, our content team is creating our original shows like Launch, like American History Tellers, like Young Charlie. And the combination of both sources is how we get, I don't know that we get to 300 podcasts, but I'll be happier. We're right now 25 million episode downloads, and I'll be really happy if we get to 50. Be even happier if we get to 100, which is where NPR is today.
Okay, so that makes sense. So now I'm making this up. You have one guy with 30, one guy with 100,000. You have your 25 million downloads. Do you charge a traditional CPM, or how do you charge?
Yes, we charge everything over here is by CPM.
Can you give a range?
Yes, most shows are getting CPMs in the 20s for pre or mid-roll.
See, I didn't know that. I'm a digital guy, and I'm going to start charging more for advertising, and I felt like 10 was high, kind of the digital space. But podcasters, as you know, and podcastees, I guess listeners, tend to be a bit more loyal, so it does garner a higher CPM. Okay, now, but as a digital marketer, though, you're a media guy. You're a true media guy, and God bless. I'm more of a marketer, though. How do you measure ROI?
The advertisers, it's interesting. There are agencies that are specialized in podcast advertising, and they measure it in the same way they do it on radio, which is by custom URLs and promo codes. So every time you hear an ad that says, please go to blayprom.com/sword and enter the promo code sword, that tells you that there's somebody on the back end measuring attribution through that way.
All right.
And that's why CPMs are high, because the performance, the conversion rates support those high CPMs relative to digital media.
Yeah, it's worth it. All right, two last questions before I wrap up.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to put you in the spot, but give us